Hi YouTube family, thanks for joining me today. My name is Lisa. I'm owner and creator of Gypsy Woman Charm. Today we will be doing 3 projects from fall going into Christmas, and I hope you enjoy them. If you love this content and would like to see more, please subscribe and give me a thumbs up, and that will help me bring you more videos. So let's get started. Project 1. So I had this wood round that was part of a hanging plant display. So I wasn't using it anymore, so I thought, well, I'll repurpose it. So I gave it a good wash, and I'm using Wood You Bend to take and put an edging around the top of the wood piece. Wood You Bend is a wonderful product. I will put in the description. I'll try to find a link of where you can get it and put it in the description box. You basically just take a heat gun or hair dryer and you heat it up, and as you heat it, it makes it where you can shape it, and you can shape it to whatever you want to apply it to. So I'm just taking my little heat gun and heating it up, and then once it cools, it will stay in that shape. So I'm just taking some paint tape and I'm holding it into place, so as it cools, it will keep the shape. And as you can see, it's very easy to cut. I just use these little all-purpose scissors that I use for everything and cut it, and then it just fits perfectly in together. So you don't even know you have a seam. Now it's all dry, and see how it's kept the shape? It's all stiff now. So I'm taking wood glue, and you can use your fingers. This day I decided I wanted to use a brush. And you just liberally apply it to the back of the Wood You Bend, and you want to cover it really well. And then you're going to take the painter's tape and you're going to hold it into place and let it dry overnight. Now I let this dry overnight, and once it's dry, I take DIY clay-based paint in a sandy blonde, and I give it a good coat and make sure there's good coverage over everything. And then I decide to use an IOD inlay, the new release 12th Night. It's the new Christmas holiday release. So I know that it can be daunting using a paint inlay, but it's super easy, guys. I just take and liberally apply a coat of the clay-based paint, and then I spritz the underside of the inlay, and you want to lay it down into the wet clay-based paint. You can do it this way with the clay-based paint because it is reactivated with water, so it will work with the inlay. If you were using a paint with a sealer, you would need to use some type of top coat and not let it dry all the way. But we're using it with the clay-based paint, so we're good. So I'm just making sure that it's very misting it so it's really damp, and you want to make sure that there's really good contact so that the paint inlay gets activated and will stay in the paint. And now you want it to dry until it gets white again. It'll look like it's completely dry, and that's at the point where you want to re-wet it. See how it's all white again? So then you want to mist it with the water, and I'm using a wet wipe just to make sure that everything is damp and everything is covered, because you want it to reactivate so it will stick in that paint. So here you go. Here's where the magic happens. If I can get an edge. There we go. Look how beautiful. And this one worked perfectly. Guys, if I can do it, anybody can. So you just let it dry, and then you're going to take a top coat. I'm using Sweet Pickins top coat. And if you use a brush, you want to use it with a very soft touch, because that will reactivate and it will smear. So if you're worried about that, you can use 50% top coat, 50% water in a spray bottle, a mister bottle, and you can mist it. And then once that dries, then you can go over it with a brush. So now I thought it needed something else. So I had this decorative paper that I had gotten from Hobby Lobby. Oh, it had to be 5 years ago. And it looks, you know, kind of fallish. So I'm going to decoupage it into the inner rim. This is going to be a piece that you can put out with your fall decor and keep it out until January, February. It's just going to be something that has longevity throughout the holidays. Now after that's dried to the touch, I take some Waverly Antiquing wax, and it is a wax, but it's also water-based, and it's not like your DIY wax. It's kind of runny, but I love the way it works on certain things, the antiquing wax. And so I just apply it liberally, and then I go back over it with a damp towel and pull back some of it, and it just gives it rests in those crevices and gives it a more antique aged look. And I also apply it to the outer edge, and just to make it all work cohesively. I end up finding an old wooden drawer pull, and I used glue and a screw and applied it to the top of the item, and then I just went back with some Waverly Antiquing wax, and then I remove the excess wax, and it turns out really good. I just thought it needed something, and I thought that gave it that something that it was missing. So now we're going to give it some embellishment. So I have some burlap, and I'm just cutting it into strips, and I'm going to make a little messy bow with it. And then I take some greenery, some winter greenery, and I think I end up putting in an acorn just to give it some embellishment. It needed something else at the top. Now I wanted to use it as a wall hanging, so I have these little sticky hook things that I got the link from Heather at Create Your Own Cozy, and I will put it in the description. They work really well. They stick well. As long as it's not super heavy, it's wonderful. It works great. And here's the finished product. Project 2. So everyone is doing their version of the jelly mold pumpkin, so I thought I'll just hop on the wagon and do my version too. So I've got here the sunflower mold from IOD, and I am applying cornstarch because I'll be using the air dry clay from IOD, and because I need to shape it around the top of that jello mold. So if you put cornstarch down first, the clay comes right out with no problem. IOD molds have that patented outer rim, which makes it so easy to get the excess clay off. IOD molds are the only one that has that, and it's well worth it. And since we put that cornstarch in there before we started, look at that, just comes right out of there. So now I'm going to take it, and on the underside, I'll make sure I put a liberal amount of glue. You want to make sure you get it to all the edges because you want all of it to stick to the item that you're adhering it onto. So then I just take it and I put it on the top of the jello mold and just make it fit. But you want to be sure and be very, very gentle with it because you don't want to lose your detail of the clay mold. So I'm just very careful, but I want to make sure it has complete contact. And then because we're going to be putting a stem in, there's a little hole there, so I go ahead and I punch out that hole so that we can fit our stem and everything in there. So it completely dried overnight, and now I'm taking the color Tango. It is a Annie Sloan color, and I added just a little bit of red to it just to make it a little darker orange, and that's what I'm using to paint the jello mold. So I do the outside, but I also end up turning it over and doing the inside also. So now it's dry, and I take my Waverly antiquing wax and I give it a good coat all over. I really want to bring out that detail, and that antiquing wax will give it some character and will bring out the detail in that flower. Now let's start decorating the top. So at first I tried some little twigs, and I tried putting that in the middle, and that didn't work. So I had some leather, and I thought, well, if we put the leather and cover a little twig with leather, that might work. And it did. It turned out really good. So I just took some hot glue, and I covered that little twig, curled it up in that leather, and glued it up. And then just hot glued it onto the inside of that little hole that we made when we applied the mold. You want to hold it for a little bit to make sure that glue holds on. Then I take some green straw, and we're just going to put some green straw around the top of that stem, but you just want a little bit, because you don't want to hide the detail of the flower on top. And you never want to waste any crafting supplies. You get every last drop of everything. Now I have some acorns, some wooden acorns, and I have this, it's not a ribbon, but it's more like a cord, and it has the fall colors in that cord. And at first I thought about tying it to it, but I didn't think it looked right. It was too stiff. So I end up making a bow out of it, and then I just apply the bow. And then I have those 2 wooden acorns that I used to decorate it also. Now I thought it needed some glitter, because I like glitter, and I had these leaves that were attached to some old beaded fruit, and so they're kind of glittery and they're beaded. So I just took a couple of those leaves, and I just put those in behind the stem. Then we had to have some curlicues, so I made some curlicues from some wire that was attached to that fruit also. And we're going to put some little curlicues along the stem also. This is my version of the Jelly Mold Pumpkin. Project 3. I have this wood candle holder. It's vintage, and I've been trying to decide what to do with it. So I have this Fusion mineral paint in the color mustard, and I got it in the Sonics Makers box for September. I'll also be using some of the digital design papers that come with it. All of this is exclusive with the Makers box, so I will leave a link if you're interested in getting a subscription. So I decided to go with the digital design for with the mushrooms. And again, that comes in the Sonics Makers box. You can't get it anywhere else. And I had painted a lighter color in the back just so the design of the paper will come through brighter. I'm taking and I'm just measuring the outside of the item, and I did it wrong anyway, because it comes out, I don't want to cover the complete outside, I want to cover the inside. So I end up having to trim it a couple of times to get it to the right size. And here I am feeling like a dummy, and I'm going to correct it using a pencil to mark the inside, and then I'm going to be using my my cutter to cut a straight line. So now I got the fit, so I'm going to use my Fusion decoupage and transfer gel and decoupage it onto the back of the candle holder. And that mustard color works so well with the decoupage paper. It was like it was meant to be. Then after it dries, I take 220 sandpaper and I just take off the excess. Now you want to do it in a downward motion. And then of course I'm going to rough it up a little bit and distress it, because you can't have a vintage antique looking item unless you give it a little distress, or at least I can't. So now I'm wiping it down so there's no sawdust or anything anywhere. And now I'm going to take Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in Grunge Gray, and we're just going to make it look even older. So I'm just taking and using it on all the places that I distressed, applying it and then rubbing it off. So now we're going to take and embellish it. And I'm just taking some green straw, placing it in there. Now I'm not going to glue that in because I'm going to be gluing the other pieces in. So it'll keep that in there. Plus, whoever gets it, if somebody wants to change it down the road, you know, they can easily take it out. So now I'm just taking these little twigs. And there's little twigs, berries, and fall colors. And it matches, I think it goes with the paper real well. So I'm just hot gluing them in different spots. So now I feel like it needs something else. So I'm going to take little pieces of burlap, some strips that I cut, and I'm just going to cut the strips in half and then just kind of bunch them up like a little piece of ribbon and then just glue them in there randomly just to kind of fill up some spots. So now I have this Grunge battery-operated candle, and I want to put it in there to where it won't come out, and I made such an oops there, guys. I got hot glue on my finger, ended up having a horrible, horrible burn. That's why I threw that candle to the side like I did, but I survived. So I put the candle in there and try to get the glue off that spilled, but as you can see why I wanted to do that. Thank you so much for making it through this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I am so happy to have you in my YouTube family. If you're not in my YouTube family, just click subscribe and you can get notified with every video I put out. I appreciate it, guys. God bless.